The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, one that's not afraid to give you the honest truth. And boy, are we going to get into a topic today. My guest today, I'm having back Dr. John Travis. Thanks for coming back. We're going to talk about vaccines today.
Oh, boy.
You are a Johns Hopkins Preventative Medicine Public Health trained physician. You founded the U.S. Wellness Center in Mill Valley in 1975, one of the first of its kind, if not the first in the U.S. You were featured on 60 Minutes with Dan Rather in 1979, and you created vaccinefacts.info, as well as being the author of the incredible wellness book that we covered last time we were together. And you also have that online wellness inventory. So the important website is Vaccine Facts Info as far as for this talk. What prepared you to be able to deal with the vaccine issue?
Well, it all started when I finished med school and started my internship at the Public Health Service Hospital in San Francisco. I found I couldn't remember drug names. I couldn't remember doses. It just felt wrong to be masking symptoms with drugs. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to continue. I could see pharma was taking over medicine. So I did this residency at Johns Hopkins and bought time basically, and then came up with the whole adult wellness stuff, and then got into infant wellness. And as a result, then had a second daughter, born at home underwater with a midwife, and we didn't vaccinate her.
Did you vaccinate your first child?
She was born in 1972, and there wasn't much then. I think she got MMR, and I actually got her a smallpox because I knew there were smallpox stored in labs around the world and thought it could be weaponized, and thought, that it would be good to have that. That was my early thinking.
So your second daughter was born in 93, and you had already figured out by 1993 that there was something about the vaccine program that you weren't happy with. How did you come to that conclusion, and what's happened since?
My skepticism of big pharma was certainly part of it, but I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what started it. I know I got attacked for bringing it up at a meeting about circumcision. Well, I thought the anti-circumcision people would be on board, and no, they didn't like it then. I thought polio and tetanus were okay, and so I planned to give those to her later. It wasn't till COVID hit that I really dug into it. I moved to Australia primarily in 2000 and learned about the AVN Meryl Dorey, who lived nearby. She actually had a Vax bus. They lost one in the flood and now have another one. So I was aware of the issue, in 2000 when I moved there. I saw the Vaxxed movie in the Mullumbimby Civic Center. All three of them were shown publicly, and that was pretty radical. I still do live in the Byron Bay area, which is the kind of hippie, radical surfer's paradise as well.
In Australia.
Yeah, things really ramped up with COVID. I smelled a rat. I fled Australia. I live here half the year and there half the year. I don't do winter well. I have SAD, and they were closing the borders. I couldn't get to the airport if I didn't leave right away. I actually got stopped in Sydney for 2 days. Got into LAX, just breezed right through. There was no focus on concern there, although Australia was shutting down. Smelled this rat, and through a friend learned about a book called To Vaccinate or Not to Vaccinate, looking at the science, and it was written by a scientist in Israel from Russia. This book is hard to find, but it preceded Turtles All the Way Down, which also came out of Israel.
Right.
His wife was a physician, and he wanted, before when they had kids, to find out, and he had like 1,000 references, and it just took me deeper and deeper. Kennedy came out with the real Anthony Fauci with 2,000 references. It was like hitting me from all sides. I learned about CHD, Children's Health Defense, well, obviously people are watching this know what that is. ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network, and Del Bigtree. And I already knew about NVIC and Barbara Loe Fisher. So it really took me a lot deeper. And there were also these 10-part, hour-long videos that 2 different outfits were producing that were beautifully done. I think you were in some of them, but they were so overwhelming. Even an hour-and-a-half long documentary is too much for someone to get their feet wet. They're just overwhelming.
You're referring to The Truth About Vaccines.
Yeah, that was one of them. And there was another one in parallel. But to reach the naive person, you can't overwhelm them. You're preaching to the choir. You need I'd learned a 5 to 7 minute video is ideally what you want to convert people, and the so-called movable middle. So I was getting lost on the CHD website. There were later on, I learned wonderful things, but I couldn't find them. And that gave me the idea to simplify it and come up with this vaccinefacts.info that I did pretty much on my own. I had a little bit of help. I hired a guy in Czechia to do the questionnaire part. It starts with 10 true-false questions that most people will get wrong. And you get your score. After you get your score, then it unlocks. You can go back and look at how you got them wrong with the references. One of the most powerful things was this amazing video that Pat O'Connell put together called Do Vaccines Make Children Healthier? And it was on YouTube at the time. It was 14 minutes long, focused on your study as well as Brian Hooker's.
Wow, they left it up on YouTube.
Yeah, 50,000 views before they took it down. It was only last year, I think they found it and took it down.
Wow. And I used to do vaccine videos on my channel, which has 1.6 million subscribers, my Dr. Paul or Paul Thomas MD YouTube channel, but I had to take off all vaccine related material because you get 3 strikes, they'll take your whole channel down.
Oh.
And I got 2 strikes, both on vaccine videos. And I thought, no, I can't afford to lose this income, because it was actually a partnership with my son who was doing the bulk of the work. So it was his income. Yeah.
She's since done a revised version. It's 21 minutes long, and it's really hard to find. I actually made a shortcut for it, tinyurl.com/my initials, JWT 3 studies B, because the original one they took down that was on YouTube. That to me is just so powerful, combined with the new one that Dell's bringing out, the inconvenient study. It should be a slam dunk for anyone, to get their teeth into it.
So it sounds like for you, your journey was similar to mine in the sense that there were no good studies on vaccine safety, right? And if you look at the ingredient list, you wouldn't feed that to your kid. Why would you inject it?
Yeah.
But there were no good studies. The Turtles All the Way Down made that crystal clear, right? I mean, no saline placebo studies. They were all very short, sometimes just days long. They didn't look at all health outcomes. They never had an unvaccinated control group. So we were just being fed tobacco science as if it was science, right?
Yeah.
And then you're talking about these vaxxed, unvaxxed studies starting to come forward. And when you see those and you look at the difference, it's like, wow, the unvaccinated are so incredibly healthy compared to the vaccinated. My own study comparing vaxxed to unvaxxed showed, massive increases for the vaccinated in the neurodevelopmental issues like ADD, ADHD, learning disabilities, et cetera, and a signal for autism as well. But not just neurodevelopmental, but also the chronic diseases of many kinds. And weird enough, not so weird for you and I who've been looking at this, but kids who are highly vaccinated are sick more often, and their sickness lasts longer. It's more severe.
Yeah, with my daughter, I don't remember ever staying home she was homeschooled for the first 5 years, but when she was in school, I don't remember ever staying home sick.
Yeah. Well, that was my experience growing up, probably yours too. I mean, we got those childhood illnesses, but beyond that, we didn't miss school.
Yeah. Going back to your study and the video, I've just realized I remembered wrong. If you go in the back door of the vaccines vaxineFacts.info, there's a backdoor to section 7, which I've got a lot of your graphs and a link to the video. That's the way to find the video. And it's tinyurl.com/JWTVF for Vaccine Facts 7. It's in the 7th question.
Okay.
And that's the only quick way I know to get to that video. I tried Googling it this morning, and they just gave me all this garbage about how safe vaccines are. It's like completely, I was using an AI with Brave, and it's completely corrupted. So,
right. Yeah. And people aren't aware that when you search, most standard search engines, most AI platforms are highly programmed to filter out the true information about vaccine risk and to share the false narrative that they're safe and effective.
And Google uses Wikipedia, which is completely flipped. Tucker Carlson just interviewed the co-founder of it, who describes how it's been completely captured. And they haven't got my webpage yet, but almost all of my friends and colleagues that I admire are dismissed as disinformation quacks, conspiracy theorists, blah, blah, blah.
Do you support MAHA? And are you familiar with PIC, Physicians for Informed
Yeah,
Consent?
I joined PIC early on. I'm not sure how I learned about it. Early on, it's Physicians for Informed Consent. I talked to Greg Glazer early on, their lawyer, and they produced these wonderful little 2-page summaries on a particular vaccine, and it was really well done. And then they just came out with this flashy book.
Yes. Okay.
Which they call it the silver booklet because it's a very silver cover, and it's a booklet because it's only 90 pages.
Yeah.
And they put together using only CDC website studies. So it's not, you can't say, well, it's an anti-vax, bias with the studies. 30 pages of references. The last third of the book is that.
Yeah.
But then they start off, they show the all of the childhood vaccines, comparing the risks with the risks from the diseases.
Yeah, the vaccine risk versus disease charts. Those are very interesting. And you're spot on. PIC, almost to a fault, will not deviate from the data they can find, that's would be trusted by our peers, for example. It's peer reviewed, it's been published, it's been validated, if you will. So an image of that vaccine risk versus disease, I think, tells a lot.
The orange bars are the risks from the vaccine, but it shows it could be anywhere from 0 to all the way over to the right. We don't know because the few studies are so conflicting because they've never properly been done. But you can see that the risks from the vaccines are so much higher than the risks from the disease, the little blue bars that are barely visible.
Right.
So then they go through each of these individually.
And before we shift off that image, I in my book, Vax Facts, I make the bold statement that for every vaccine on the childhood schedule, your risk of death is greater from the vaccine than it is for the from the disease for which you're vaccinating. And of course, that's talking about, which the PIC book makes very clear, you're talking about otherwise healthy children.
Yeah.
Right. And living in today's world where these diseases are largely gone, if not completely gone.
And weren't that dangerous with proper sanitation and health to begin with. I remember when I came across the Geyer study in 2000 in pediatrics, that the myth that vaccines have led to the reduction of infectious diseases, he came out and said this, no, it was better sanitation, chlorinated water, flush toilets, all of the, and they actually told us that in my master's in public health in 1970. I knew that.
If you look at the graphs of all the diseases, those for which we had vaccines and those for which we didn't, dissolvingillusions.com, that website has all those graphs. It is astounding. So the vaccines are given credit for this massive drop in mortality and morbidity, but almost all of it happened before the vaccine was introduced.
Yeah, it's astounding. This continual lie about that is promoted. I think that was one of the Maha things just recently. They did a little piece on, or was it? No, Kennedy did that. He did a short video on exposing that lie. It was
Yeah.
really beautifully done. They go through each of the diseases a page or two, and I think your book is the best reference to if you want more details. But the beauty of this thing is that it's so compact you can take it to your pediatrician when you
Yeah.
want to avoid vaccination, and you've got some proof in a compact thing that they can't find any fault with.
Something
Yeah.
visual. If there's
Yeah.
nothing like just opening it up and here's the
Yeah.
graph. And
Yeah.
and this doctor is why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Let's look at the measles one, because measles is always one that I don't know. They like to scare people. We're all going to die of measles if we stop vaccinating.
Ignoring the fact that most of the people in the epidemic were vaccinated, that they conveniently don't say.
Yes. So this graph, what does this show?
Well, on the lower left there, you can see the history, how it spiked up and down, and then right down there where that blue bubble has an arrow pointing is where the vaccine was introduced.
Right.
And this is the same in Dissolving Illusions. She does it for all of the diseases, and even the ones without vaccines. And I've used those in my website too. That it's ridiculous to say that the vaccines reduced any of these significantly. And with the polio one, they actually changed the definition of polio with the advent of the vaccine so that it looked like a big drop had occurred when they just changed the definition.
Yeah.
So
prior to the vaccine, any paralysis was polio. After the vaccine, you had to have 60 days of paralysis, which almost all polio paralysis resolves by 60 days.
And much of what they thought was polio was probably toxic poisons that even FDR, who swam in these contaminated pools, probably didn't have polio, but chemical damage to his nerve.
DDT was everywhere back then.
Yeah.
Let's look at the MMR. I think there was an image on that one. You wanted to make a highlight of so a couple points.
Yeah. Well, obviously, comparing the measles one, what's dramatic about this is that almost 30 years ago, Andy Wakefield was dragged into this as a gastroenterologist by some sick boys who had terrible gastrointestinal problems. And somehow or other, he noticed that if they had the MMR combo, they were much more likely to develop autism than if they were separated. And for that, he said, we just need more research. This is a tiny study. For that, he was Wakefielded, as they say, attacked viciously by a vaccine company-owned media. Murdoch, who owns vaccine companies in Australia, hired a journalist, I think it was the Telegraph in London, that went after him viciously, even wrote a horrible book about him about 3 years ago, continuing the lies.
He continues to smear his name for no good reason.
And then Trump vindicated him last week, saying the same thing. It's like when Polly Tommy interviewed Andy, said, what's it like to be vindicated by the president of the United States? What a hoot that was. That's where I'm so delighted that the tide is turning. I feel like we had Dissolving Illusions way back when, and then Turtles all the way down was about 3-4 years ago. And then just in the last year, 5 books, including yours and the Silver Booklet, boom, all happening in 1 year. It's like overwhelming, but different aspects of it, from Gavin de Becker, as Dell described it, it's the guy's book, because he tackles things like Agent Orange. Aaron Siri comes out, and your book, and then John Leake and Peter McCullough.
The information is now so, I don't know what the right word is.
About it.
Yeah. Well, we have so much information now. It's not like we're just pulling little random tiny studies. There are lots of studies. What are your hopes for the future for children? How should we now move forward given what we do know now?
Well, the fact that 60% of parents are questioning the CDC schedule, that's an enormous shift just in the last couple of years. And I think the COVID vaccine craziness woke people way more than I thought was going to happen. That's a major thing. And with Kennedy's changes and bringing it to our awareness, I think what's going to happen is, first of all, eliminating the mandates. The 5 holdout states are the last ones to go, but just eliminating it across the board so that people have a choice. And sure, there are going to be a lot of people who still believe the vaccine religion, and they're going to do it, but a lot of people will be freed up, and the norms will change, and you won't feel locked in. And along with the other aspects of MAHA, of looking at the food supply, the artificial colors and dyes and preservatives, and focusing on highly processed foods, ultra processed foods, all of these things that are out in the open, and people like Ron Johnson bringing it to the Senate. I just see a big shift occurring, not as fast as some of us would like it, but it's got to be done stepwise. And I think it is. I'm just so encouraged to see what's unfolding that I wasn't sure I'd ever see in my lifetime.
Agreed. So what would your advice be to a new parent or somebody that's thinking about having kids when it comes to vaccines? What would you tell them?
Get informed first. Go to the simple things. That's why I did vaccinefacts.info. It's a simple stir you up, like, wow, I didn't know that. But it's not overwhelming. You can go as deep as you want to go with it. I'd like to update it. It's really could use a lot more professional help, but it's a start. And your book, of course, the silver booklet, take that to your pediatrician. Once you're aware that, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right. There's no safety tests. To have that come out in the New England Journal of Medicine a year ago, July, it's pretty radical, unrecognized by most pediatricians. There's enormous pushback and to be expected from big pharma, who are funding the AAP and the AMA and most of the media. If they're able to get the commercials off the news, which is how they control the news, is that most of their funding comes from big pharma. So they aren't going to put anything in the news about what's going on. But I think Kennedy's first step, wasn't it to force them to put in all of the side effects? And that'll take so long that the commercial will be unairable.
I just chuckle when I see commercials for pharmaceutical products. I mean, the list of side effects at the end, who would, in their right mind, would ever consider such a product? It's insane.
I think Kennedy's plan was to make them put them all in, so it would be longer than the commercial. And only the U.S. and not even that much in New Zealand. They're the only other country that allows it, and it all happened in the 90s. It didn't used to be that way. And then the 1986 law that removed all responsibility from the manufacturers. So of course they aren't motivated to do any safety testing.
Yeah, if we could restore their liability and remove all ads from TV, so TV stations can start really reporting what's actually happening. But to the listener, I'm hearing Dr. Travis tell us that you've got to do your own research. Check out vaccinefacts.info. I took your test. It is, for me, it's easy, but you're right. A lot of people don't know the answers to that information. And when you know the answers, you're going to really go, oh, why would I put that in my child's body, right? Well, I'm going to let you have the parting words for our audience. Thank you so much for being on our show and bringing all the information that you brought.
Well, the single most important thing you can do for your child's wellness, and I did adult wellness, all of this work, and then I discovered infant wellness and all of the important aspects of attachment and connection. I think the currency of wellness is connection, but there's one single thing you can do or not do, and that's don't load them up with all these vaccines. Ideally, none of them, at the very least, very few spread out. It's going to change your child's life. The data is just overwhelming. They can't hide it any longer.
Thank you for that. They can't put that genie back in the bottle. Once you know, you can't unknow it. Once you've seen, you cannot unsee it. And when I hold a little baby, in my arms, and it's like, they're precious. And if I hear that the family's not going to vaccinate, I just have this joy and happiness within me because I know that little baby's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hear they're going to vaccinate, especially the full schedule, but really any vaccines, I just feel sad. I need to work on this, I guess, but I just feel sad for that baby because I've seen so much harm. And it's not just death. It's not just autism. It's almost any chronic disease you can think of can be somehow tied back to the massive onslaught on our immune system with the vaccines and the toxins, et cetera.
It's not even a formed immune system at that stage. It's developing slowly, and you're screwing with it each time you inject something like that. So,
no, absolutely agreed. I'm so glad you said that. You said the most important thing, and I'm thinking, I'm waiting. Okay, here it comes. What's it going to be? And you have the to just say, hey, don't vaccinate.
I'll throw in for the boys, don't cut off 70% of the fine touch endings of their penis.
I would agree. Thank you, Jack. I really enjoyed our time together, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, folks, you can also catch me on kidsfirstforever.com. This is where you can reach me for coaching. I coach on anything, but basically I'm providing information. I'm not diagnosing or treating. And get the book Vax Facts. It is probably the easiest read with the most digestible form of information that you need to make informed decisions about whether or not you want to vaccinate. Read it before you say yes to a vaccine. If you're in that unknown space, pause while you get the information. Like Jack said, get your information and then move forward. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you next week.
We are live. So tell us your name, please.
My name is Kelly.
All right, Kelly. And this is about your child?
Yes.
Okay. How many children do you have?
Just one.
Just one. Okay. How old is he now?
15, almost 16.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to when you were pregnant.
Yes.
And talk us through what happened, because you did take a flu shot, right?
I did take a flu shot in my first trimester.
Do you remember what the doctor said to you, or whoever gave you that shot to make you have it?
My pediatrician, or my doctor, had said, for health reasons, you should, protect your child and get the flu vaccine. So I did do that, and it was a clinic at work. So it was just a random person, who administers vaccines.
Okay, so
safe, don't worry, you're doing the right thing.
Did you take any other vaccines when you were pregnant?
No.
Okay.
No.
So talk us through, because it's a lot of issues here. So
there are. So I was an older parent, and he's a donor child, so it's just me and him. And I was very adamant about what I ate. I was super careful, and I decided that I wanted to do an alternate vaccine schedule because I was concerned about autism, being an older parent. And so I interviewed a lot of pediatricians to find one that was willing to do it. It wasn't easy. And so when I was in the hospital with him, I had to sign a waiver with the hospital. They were very adamant that I had to sign a waiver to avoid the vitamin K and the hepatitis B shot.
So you
and
did
it was
not do those
I did
two.
not do those two.
How was he when he was born?
He was a C-section.
Okay.
It was not in my birth plan. But he was a C-section after about 2 days of trying to have a natural birth. I was able to breastfeed him, which was great, but at the time I didn't know to swab him. Now they do that because he didn't catch the immune system from me. He caught it from everything that was in the operating room, which I've learned now is, starts their immune system off. And so that probably wasn't the best start for him. And he developed normally, and we were on an alternate schedule. Sometimes I had to go to the health department to separate vaccines. But he was doing pretty good. Typical kid, had a lot of ear infections and other things growing up. So he'd been on antibiotics.
What do you mean you had to go to the health department to separate vaccines?
So a lot of the pediatrician offices, because I was separating vaccines, didn't have those. They had the combination shots. So
you can't separate the MMR.
No, I can't separate the MMR. The MMR was one I could not. The ones that I could, then I had to go to the health department because in most cases they did not have the single vaccines for some of those. So, and I was very glad to do that. And of course, at the time, give your child Tylenol before you go get the vaccine, which we now know is not a good thing. And so there was that. There's a lot of things I know in hindsight now that just wasn't available to us. We were given the wrong information. And so, he was sick. But he was a normal child. Everything was great. Then when he was 4, we got the flu shot in January of 2013 when he was 4. And then in March, we went in I wanted to get food sensitivity testings. I mean, we'd always been watching his diet. He had eczema, ear infections. He had strep a number of times. And so I wanted to do a food panel. And so at the time they were like, well, let's get his MMR out of the way. And we don't have the MMR separate, it's an MMRV.
So for people listening, MMRV means basically it's measles, mumps, rubella, and now chickenpox. MMRV is the V is for the chickenpox.
All in one. And 2 months prior, he'd had the flu shot. So, in hindsight, I was so diligent. So he got the MMRV, and then maybe about 2 months later, he was complaining. He had a stomach ache. He started eating more of a restrictive diet. Bacon that he loved, he stopped eating. And so then I started kind of adjusting his diet. I took him, all these strange things. He had to go to the bathroom all the time. He started having kind of OCD symptoms where he was washing his hands all the time and he was worried about what he would touch. About a month went by and he was complaining about his throat hurting a lot. So I took him to the pediatrician and they ran all the strep, the rapid, and the throat culture and sent it in the lab. They both came back negative. And I said, well, he's not eating like he normally does, and he's real lethargic and he's kind of tired. And they're like, well, just feed him applesauce and soft things and, tea and other things. And so I did. And then other symptoms started showing up. He started having a little more anxiety. Separation anxiety became more like when he was a toddler. He had a really hard time being away from me. And he had to go to the bathroom like every 30 minutes. We couldn't go anywhere. And so I took him back and they said, well, we'll run a strep test again. Again, it came back negative. And he'd had strep a lot. And for some reason, it was coming back negative. So it's now August and he is very lethargic and he's losing weight. He was probably 49 pounds when we went in for the vaccine. He was now 47 pounds. He had lost weight, and that's a lot for a little kid. So school started and the separation anxiety was awful. I mean, normally you drop your child off. He's starting kindergarten. We're at a Montessori school. I drop him off and he's having a hard time. He's crying. He's upset. And normally, you leave 15 minutes later, they're fine. They're busy, they're distracted. They called me multiple times when school started and said, we just can't calm him down. He's inconsolable. So I had to go get him. Took him into school again. Now he's having bad thoughts. And the school called me one day and said, he's talking about dying and death, and he doesn't want to die, and he doesn't want to, all of these things. And I thought, what is going on? And he's getting very gaunt. He's hardly eating. So my mom picked him up from school and brought him home, and he just laid on the floor and he hardly moved. And I said, that's it, we're going back to the pediatrician. This is maybe a month later. And so I made an appointment in the morning, and it's ironic because a friend of mine had said an article to me, and there's this little thing about pandas at the bottom. And I read it, and so I started researching the night before. And we had some probiotics and some fish oil, so I loaded him up with some probiotics and fish oil that night, and he was a little better in the morning. And so we had the appointment, and I went in, It's your traditional pediatrician, big box, right? It's corporate. And you never get your normal pediatricians, whoever's on call that day. So it was a male doctor, and we went in, and I brought my mom with me because I didn't want my son to hear all the things that were going on. I didn't want him to hear it. And so I excused me out of the room, and I went into it, and he stopped me and said, "Listen, I don't have time for a consult. What are we dealing with right now?" And so, because I was going back, and I said, "Here's all the things, here's all the appointments that we've had, here's what's going on." I said, "There's something wrong, and I think this is what it is." And he said, "Well, we don't believe in pandas." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "And I don't have time for a consult. So what do you need right now? What are his symptoms right now?" And I said, "Would you please just give me some antibiotics and all of my medical records?" I said, "I'm done." So my mom and I left, and I found another pediatrician that would consider pandas and pans, and we did a bunch of blood work and looked at his teeters and other things, and they couldn't definitively say that he had it, but as a mom, you know when your child has it. And so we went down the path of naturopathy and homeopathy solutions, and I found a great homeopath who treated him with a natural form of strep, and he got markedly better. He still had the OCD, the bad thoughts went away. He started eating I think it was a combination of the antibiotics and all of the things we were doing with the naturopath and the homeopathy things. But it was very frustrating because it wasn't just one doctor. I mean, you had to find 2 or 3, and it really puts the burden on the parents to have to advocate for their kids, especially when they won't listen to, kind of what's gone on over time. And so at that point, I decided no more vaccines.
So you're done?
We're done. And he hasn't had another vaccine. It took us about 5 years to fully heal him. It wasn't a short process. I ended up finding a functional MD pediatrician, and she was able, when he was probably about 8, find a really nasty bacteria in his gut. And so we gave him and watched him very closely with antibiotics. That's the last time he's ever had antibiotics. And it got rid of the remaining OCD. And by the time he was 10, he was doing great. Since he entered public school in 1st grade, he's been on an IEP. He has ADHD. He has auditory processing disorder, which is not a hearing problem. It is a brain disorder, and it's how he processes information, executive function. As a kid, he had issues with tags in his clothes and sensory. He was challenged with social interactions. So there's a lot of things, I think, that definitely were impacted with some of the early things that, happened during his lifetime. And, but he's doing great. This year he graduated off his IEP. He's a sophomore in high school. He's social, he's athletic, he's doing amazing. And but it's been a journey, and it's been a lot of research on my own, and it's not something that there's any playbook. I think every child is different, and if our story can help parents identify even an inkling of something that we've done that might help their child, that's why I'm here. That's why I wanted to tell his story.
Thank you for telling this story. It's a great warning to parents. I always just wonder how we are going to help the young parents of today not make the mistakes we both made.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the health of the unvaccinated?
I have. And if it's so hard because the pressures of the public school system, and, it's hard. It's really a challenge. It's really a challenge for parents today, and I think part of it being informed. If I look at the vaccine schedule, I thought we had to do them all. but you don't. Not for public school. Not for public school.
Whoever thought that your child could be injured from one? All
Oh,
we ever
yeah.
hear is safe and effective.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we know so much about children's immune systems now. Our immune systems, you know, the gut-brain connection. At the end of the day, I know the strep infection crossed the blood-brain barrier in my child, and his brain inflamed, and he heard voices, and I believed him. But at 5, it's crazy. You just think, you trust our medical community, and I think they try to do the best they know how to, but I think we have to be informed. And if I could scream from the rooftops for every new mother, you know, there are options. And there are very healthy kids who never receive a single vaccine.
That's true. Well, thank you for doing this story and telling it so well. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Polly.